So it's about how I was made. And I know how my parents made my body, and I don't want to get into that. But they couldn't have made my soul because my soul was reincarnated. So how did that get to my body? And did I go to that specific body based on my karma, or did I choose it?
Can you say what you mean, Alex, by my soul? What do
I mean my whirlpool, like my finite mind.
Okay, good. Okay, well, let's not go into too much detail about how your parents made you. But suffice to say this, that there were two whirlpools drifting in the river of consciousness. And over the series of time and through a convoluted, lengthy pathway that each whirlpool took, they eventually collided. And out of this collision, a new whirlpool was spawned. A little mini whirlpool as a result of this collision. A little whirlpool was born, which, to begin with, hovered around the collided whirlpools that hovered around in their vicinity, but slowly begins to drift away from the parent whirlpools out into the river of consciousness. However, let's call it the mini whirlpool. The content of the mini whirlpool was not simply born from the collision of the two parent whirlpools. These two whirlpools, the offspring of these two whirlpools, were partly responsible for the mini whirlpool, but there were many other ripples present in the environment when this collision took place, and those ripples also contributed to the make of the mini whirlpool. Now, where did those ripples come from? Those ripples are the remnants of a whirlpool that previously disbanded or dissolved into the river of consciousness and left an echo or a trace of itself in the stream of consciousness, which gathered together with the two colliding parent whirlpools to form this little mini whirlpool. So that is why the mini whirlpool called Alexander bears within him characteristics that belong to the two parent whirlpools called Guillaume and Joni, but also bears other characteristics in him that cannot be explained simply by the collision of the two parental whirlpools. There are many characteristics in the mini whirlpool Alexander that come from the broader river of consciousness, and indeed that are specific remnants from previous whirlpools. And I don't need to explain it, but the previous whirlpool that disbanded to give rise to these ripples was itself a convergence of ripples from a previous dissolving whirlpool. So it's not that there was an entity that chose to be Alexander with particular parents or particular circumstances or particular qualities. That Alexander is a coincidence of numerous elements, some of which are obviously traceable through your parents and grandparents, through various whirlpools, but some of them are less obvious to trace. So it's not that a person chose, but at the same time, Alexander is not just a random coincidence of
There are no coincidences.
There are no coincidences. It's just that we cannot see. It's obvious if we look at certain features of Alexander, we can trace them back to the parental collision. But there are other features in Alexander that we cannot trace back to his parents because they come from elements in the river that our finite minds simply don't have access to. So we have to say they are not coincidences, but we simply don't know where those elements came from. But what we can legitimately say is that wherever they came from, they exist in consciousness, because it is our experience that whatever exists in consciousness.
Thank you.
And the beauty of this is really just an aside from your question, Alex. The beauty of a meeting, a gathering such as this, and it's really one of the ways that this teaching works, that each of our whirlpools are in a gathering such as this are colliding with each other more or less intimately all the time, where every conversation, every time we look someone in the eye, every time we have any communication, we are colliding with each other and then moving apart, and in doing so our whirlpools our minds are sharing themselves. You've heard me say this line of poetry before, Alex, from Primo Levi, on his poem called Friendship. And he says, each of us is like a seal meaning a wax seal, not a sea creature, like a wax seal, a soft wax seal. Each of us is, he said, before the wax hardened, each of us was like a seal. Remember the time before the wax hardened, when everyone was like a seal. Each of us bears the trace, each of us bears the memory of a friend met along the way. In each, the trace of each. In each of our every encounter leaves a trace of the other in our whirlpool. And this is how this teaching communicates itself and shares itself, not just from the teacher to the student, but amongst all of us. We are all exchanging this loving understanding between each other and then taking it out into the broader stream of consciousness and touching other whirlpools with it.